They laughed at him the moment he walked into the courtroom. His suit was old. His shoes were worn. His hands looked like they belonged to a laborer, not a lawyer. The opposing attorney smirked. The gallery whispered. Even the bailiff raised an eyebrow. He stood alone at the defense table, a poor father representing himself in a custody battle he was destined to lose. Or so they thought. Because what no one in that courtroom knew was that the quiet man they were mocking had written legal opinions that shaped the nation. And before the judge struck the gavel that day, the truth would come out, and every single person in that room would wish they had chosen silence over judgment. But to understand why he stood there in silence while they humiliated him, you have to know why he let them. Daniel Harper looked nothing like power. He looked tired. His beard was slightly overgrown, not by neglect but by exhaustion. His jacket had been pressed carefully, though its fabric had faded over the years. He carried a thin folder instead of an expensive briefcase. Across the courtroom sat his ex-wife, Vanessa, elegant and composed, represented by one of the most expensive family law attorneys in the state. Vanessa wasn't cruel. She was practical. She believed stability came with status. And Daniel, in her eyes, no longer had either. 2 years earlier, Daniel had stepped away from public life without explanation. Headlines speculated. News channels debated. Political commentators guessed. Health issues, some said. Scandal, others whispered. The truth was simpler. Their son, Ethan, had been diagnosed with a rare neurological condition. The treatments required consistency, presence, and a father who could sit beside a hospital bed for hours without distraction. Daniel chose to step down from his position quietly. He gave up prestige for presence. He traded public respect for private responsibility. But Vanessa saw something else. She saw instability. She saw lost income. She saw a future she no longer trusted. The divorce was civil at first. Until custody became the battlefield. Vanessa's attorney stood confidently. Your Honor, my client provides financial stability, structured schooling, and a secure social environment. Mr. Harper, with no current declared high-income position, cannot provide the same. Murmurs filled the room. Daniel remained silent. The attorney continued, almost casually, while Mr. Harper claims to prioritize time over income, love does not pay medical bills. A few quiet chuckles escaped from the gallery. Daniel's hands tightened slightly around the edge of the table. He had spent the last 2 years consulting quietly, living modestly, ensuring Ethan's treatments were uninterrupted. He wore old suits because new ones weren't necessary. He drove an older car because image no longer mattered. But perception does not care about sacrifice. When asked why he did not retain private counsel, Daniel answered calmly. I am representing myself, Your Honor. The opposing attorney smiled thinly. Confident for a man in your position. The judge glanced at Daniel with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Mr. Harper, do you have legal training? A pause. The entire room leaned forward. Yes, Your Honor, Daniel replied softly. Some. The courtroom erupted in quiet laughter. Some. They saw a desperate father clinging to pride. They did not see the truth sitting inches away from them. And Daniel let them laugh. Because this was never about his pride. It was about his son. The hearing progressed. Financial records were presented. School reports discussed. Medical statements reviewed. Vanessa's attorney grew bolder. Your Honor, Mr. Harper's employment history shows a sudden resignation from a federal judicial position. No subsequent formal employment of similar stature. This instability raises concerns. The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Harper, can you clarify the circumstances of your resignation? Daniel stood slowly. The room quieted, expecting excuses. Instead, Daniel opened his thin folder. Inside were copies of official documents bearing a seal most people in the room recognized instantly. He handed one to the bailiff. Your Honor, I did not resign under investigation. I requested a temporary leave to care for my son. When it became clear his condition required long-term presence, I stepped down permanently. The judge studied the document. His expression changed. Color drained slightly from his face. The opposing attorney leaned forward. "What exactly was your position, Mr. Harper?" Daniel met his gaze calmly. "I served as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court." Silence. Absolute silence. The air felt heavier. Someone in the gallery gasped audibly. The attorney blinked as if he had misheard. "That's impossible." Daniel reached into the folder again and produced a second document, his official appointment confirmation, signed and archived. "I was appointed 11 years ago," he said quietly. "I authored majority opinions in constitutional matters you likely studied in law school." The attorney's confidence evaporated. The judge stood abruptly. "Justice Harper." The title echoed across the room. Justice. The same man they had mocked minutes earlier. Daniel's voice remained steady. "I do not mention this for intimidation, nor prestige. I mention it because my decision to leave that position was not weakness. It was choice. I chose my son over a lifetime appointment." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, not from humiliation, but from realization. She had known he left his position for Ethan. She had not fully understood what he gave up. Daniel continued, "Financial stability can be rebuilt. Childhood cannot. I did not step down because I failed. I stepped down because Ethan needed a father more than the country needed another opinion." The courtroom remained frozen. The judge cleared his throat, visibly moved. "Justice Harper, why did you not disclose this earlier?" Daniel looked toward Ethan, sitting quietly in the second row. "Because this case should not be about who I was. It should be about who I am as a father." The words settled deeply. After a brief recess, the ruling was delivered. Joint custody. With primary medical decision authority granted to Daniel. Not because of his former title, but because of documented involvement, consistency, and devotion. As the courtroom emptied, the same people who had whispered now avoided eye contact. The attorney who mocked him approached hesitantly. "I apologize, Justice Harper." Daniel shook his head gently. "Call me Daniel." Outside the courthouse, Ethan ran into his arms. "Did we win, Dad?" Daniel knelt and held him tightly. "We did. But they were laughing at you," Ethan said softly. Daniel smiled. Sometimes people laugh when they don't understand. Years later, that courtroom would remember the day they learned a lesson no law school teaches. Never measure a man by his shoes. Never confuse humility with weakness. And never assume that quiet means incapable. Because sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. And the greatest title a man can ever hold is not justice, but father.